Evan Parker had always been good with machines. Even as a boy, he could fix almost anything that was broken. Radios, engines, computers. He did not care what it was. He could make it work again. Now, as an engineer aboard the human fleet, he worked on technology far beyond what Earth had ever built. Yet nothing he had seen prepared him for the task the Admiral had assigned him today. He was to inspect the armor of Queen Lyra, the ruler of the Varan Dominion. The Varan were known throughout the galaxy as fierce warriors. Their queen was said to be the strongest among them, a woman who had fought countless battles and survived situations that would kill ordinary beings. Stories told of her strength, her cunning, and the terrible wrath she could bring down on anyone who disrespected her. And now, Evan was supposed to touch the very thing she wore in battle, something almost sacred to her people. When he first entered the chamber, Evan could feel the difference immediately. The room was huge, circular, and lined with dark metal walls that gleamed faintly under soft lights. The air smelled faintly of ozone and something sweet, a strange perfume that was alien but not unpleasant. Queen Lyra sat on a raised platform at the center. Her armor lay in pieces on a table in front of her. Even disassembled, it looked formidable. Thick, interlocking plates shimmered with a dull metallic glow, each one engraved with patterns that told stories of battles long past. Evan swallowed. He had faced machines that were more complex than this armor. But he had never faced a person like Lyra. She did not rise to greet him. Instead, she simply watched him, her sharp green eyes following his every movement. She was taller than most humans, with a posture that radiated both grace and authority. Her skin had a faint silver tone that shimmered in the light, and her hair fell over her shoulders like liquid night. Evan had seen images of alien royalty before, but nothing compared to the reality of her presence. "I hear you are the one they sent to fix my armor," Lyra said, her voice soft but firm. "I am," Evan replied calmly. "I've repaired similar systems before. Your armor is mostly mechanical, so I can check the plating and the stabilizers. Nothing to fear." Lyra raised an eyebrow. "Nothing to fear? Humans usually tremble before me." Raising. "I am here to fix a problem, not to fear," Evan said simply. Her eyes narrowed slightly, and for a moment, he thought she might be offended. Instead, she tilted her head and allowed him to approach the table. He could feel the weight of her gaze, as if she were measuring every inch of him, trying to understand what made him different from the other humans she had encountered. Evan began examining the armor. The outer plates were scratched and dented from battles, but they were still strong. The inner frame, however, had several stress fractures. These were the dangerous parts. If the frame failed in battle, even the queen herself could be hurt. Evan's fingers traced the edges of the fractures carefully. His touch was light, but precise. He was not just repairing metal. He was touching history, legacy, and trust. Lyra observed silently, her hands resting on her knees. Evan noticed the faint rise and fall of her chest, the small movements of a warrior who rarely allowed herself to relax. It struck him that she had survived so many fights not just because of her strength, but because she was careful, meticulous, and aware of every detail around her. She had not been afraid to fight, but she had always been aware of her limits. "Why do you do it so calmly?" Lyra asked after a while. Most humans would be shaking. They would step back, or they would fumble. Evan did not stop moving his hands over the armor. "Because I do not see you as a threat. I see your armor as a machine that needs repair. If I panic, I will fail." Lyra's lips curved slightly. "Interesting. Most humans cannot separate fear from respect. You can." After sighed. The queen leaned forward slightly, and Evan could see the faintest flicker of curiosity in her eyes. She did not move away, when he reached for a particularly delicate piece of plating near her shoulder. This part of the armor was complicated, with sensors and micro-stabilizers woven into the metal. One wrong move could disable the whole system. Evan held his breath for a moment, then carefully adjusted the mechanisms inside. He heard the quiet click as the piece snapped back into place. "There," he said softly. "That should hold under stress now." Lyra watched him closely. "You did not hesitate. Not once. Because hesitation can cause mistakes," Evan said. She tilted her head again, studying him. For a moment, it felt as though the entire weight of her empire rested on her gaze. Evan did not flinch. He had faced impossible tasks before, but nothing like this. This was not just about metal or technology. This was about earning the trust of a being who had never trusted anyone so fully. "Humans are strange," she said after a long pause. "You are small, fragile even. And yet you carry yourself like a warrior. Why?" Evan smiled faintly. "Because humans survive by adapting. We are not the strongest, but we find ways to overcome challenges. You do not need to fear me, and I do not need to fear you. We both do what is necessary to survive." The Queen remained silent for a long moment. Then she laughed softly, a sound that was both musical and commanding. "I like you, Evan Parker. You do not behave like a human should. Perhaps you are the exception." Evan nodded. "Perhaps. Or, perhaps I am just used to being around machines and people alike. Fear is not useful if it stops you from doing what must be done." Lyra's eyes softened just slightly. For a creature who had lived her entire life in a world of warriors and fear, this was remarkable. No one had ever spoken to her like this before. She wondered if humans were truly as unafraid as this one, or if he simply knew how to hide it. "You will repair the rest of the armor tomorrow," she said finally. "I wish to see if your skill is consistent. If you fail, it will not be tolerated." "I will be here," Evan said. "I do not fail easily." The Queen's gaze lingered on him as he packed his tools. There was an unspoken understanding between them. He respected her authority, and she respected his composure. This was not a bond formed by friendship or loyalty. It was formed by trust in each other's skill and determination. As Evan left the chamber, he noticed the guards watching him warily. They had seen many humans, most trembling or begging for mercy. Evan's calm presence unnerved them. He had not done anything to threaten their queen, yet the quiet strength he carried spoke louder than any weapon. That night, as he lay in his quarters aboard the human ship, Evan could not stop thinking about Queen Lyra. He wondered how such a fierce warrior could be so observant, so demanding, and yet so curious about someone like him. He realized that trust was rare in the galaxy, and he had earned a piece of hers today. That thought was both satisfying and dangerous. For Lyra, the night was restless. She could not stop thinking about the human who had repaired her armor. His calm hands, steady eyes, and simple honesty had left an impression she had never expected. Normally, she did not allow anyone to come so close. Not even her most trusted advisors. But Evan had done more than touch her armor. He had touched a part of her that she did not even understand herself. By the next morning, both of them were ready for the next stage. Evan would return to finish the armor, and Lyra would observe him again. Neither could predict what would happen when their worlds, human and Varan, came so close. All they knew was that something had begun, a connection born of skill, courage, and the quiet understanding that sometimes fear was not the strongest force in the galaxy. As Evan entered the chamber once more, Lyra rose slightly from her seat. The light caught the edges of her armor, and he could see the same fractures he had repaired the day before. She allowed him to approach without guards, her gaze steady and unafraid. He smiled faintly, picking up the tools he needed for the next repair. And for the first time, Lyra allowed herself to be near someone without the shields of war or command. The queen of a warrior empire and the quiet human engineer were about to discover that trust could be as strong as any weapon, and perhaps even stronger than fear. Evan returned to the Queen's chamber the next morning. The guards eyed him suspiciously as usual, but Lyra waved them away. "Leave us," she said, her voice calm but commanding. "I want no interruptions." The men hesitated, but they obeyed. As the doors closed, the room fell silent, except for the faint hum of the lights and the soft clinking of armor pieces. Evan set his tools on the table and began examining the new damage. This time, the fractures were deeper, and some of the internal stabilizers had been slightly misaligned from the previous battle. As he worked, he could feel Lyra's eyes on him, observing his every movement. Unlike yesterday, she did not sit stiffly. She leaned forward slightly, resting her elbows on her knees, watching with interest rather than authority. "Do you always watch humans this closely?" Evan asked, not looking up. "It might make some nervous." "I do not watch all humans," Lyra said. "Only those who do not act like the rest. Most tremble, beg, or try to impress. You are calm. It is strange." Evan smiled faintly. "I focus on the task. That is all. The rest is distraction." Her lips curved slightly. "I have never met a human who speaks like that. Most of your kind talk too much, or too loudly, or in ways that betray fear." "I suppose I have always found silence more useful," Evan said. "Silence allows you to see what is really happening. Talking too much can blind you to problems." Lyra tilted her head, studying him. "Problems are what I live with every day. But humans, you see them differently. I do not understand why. Perhaps it is your nature to challenge danger without fear." Evan adjusted one of the inner plates carefully, snapping it back into place. "I think humans survive because we cannot always control what happens. We cannot fight everything. We learn to endure, to adapt, to keep going even when the world is against us." The Queen leaned closer, her voice dropping slightly. "You speak as though life is simple. For my people, life is never simple. Every day is a battle. Every moment is survival." "I understand," Evan said softly. "But even in battle, a calm mind is stronger than fear. A strong hand is better than anger. You may be a queen, but even queens need allies." For the first time, Lyra's eyes softened. She did not speak for a long moment. Her hands rested on her knees, relaxed but tense, as if she were unused to being so near someone without command or battle. Evan adjusted another piece of the armor, feeling the slight vibrations of the stabilizer he had repaired yesterday. The system had held perfectly. His careful work yesterday had earned him this trust. "You repair more than metal," Lyra said quietly. "You repair confidence. I can feel it when you work. Others cannot do this. Others on barely. Others on." Evan did not look up. "I repair what I can. Sometimes it is the machine. Sometimes it is the trust in those who use it. It is all connected." Lyra's gaze lingered. Her voice dropped even lower, almost hesitant. "Do you always speak so plainly to queens?" "Not always," Evan said. "But I speak plainly to people I respect. Pretending does not help anyone." She was silent, and Evan continued his work. As he repaired the final inner plates, he noticed something odd. There were tiny scratches near the joint connectors, almost invisible, but clearly made by someone who had tested the armor under extreme stress. "You fought recently," Evan said softly. "Your armor bears it." Lyra's eyes flickered, and she looked away for a moment. "Yes, I went into battle myself. Some think a queen should only command. Some think strength is only in leadership. But I cannot trust all of my warriors. Not always. Sometimes, I must fight to protect my people." Evan nodded, carefully tightening the last stabilizer. "You are not weak," he said. "You are strong in ways few understand. That is why you survive. And that is why this armor needs care. Because it carries more than your body. It carries your responsibility, your people, and your legacy." Lyra's gaze returned to him. Her eyes softened in a way few had ever seen. "You understand more than most," she said quietly. "Because I do not see your armor as a shield," Evan said. "I see it as part of you. And I respect the one who wears it." The Queen remained silent for a long moment, watching him work. Then, without warning, she leaned forward and lightly touched his shoulder. It was the first physical contact he had received from her. Evan froze slightly, but he did not pull back. The touch was not aggressive or commanding. It was curious, cautious, as if she were testing the boundary between them. "You are not afraid," Lyra said softly. "No," Evan said. "I trust you to trust me." Her lips curved slightly, almost a smile, though she did not admit it. "Few beings earn that from me. Few humans, even." They worked in silence for some time. Evan carefully aligned the remaining pieces, ensuring that every joint moved smoothly. Every stabilizer functioned correctly. Lyra remained nearby, leaning forward at times, watching closely, her hands folded in her lap. There was a tension in the air, but it was not hostile. It was curiosity, fascination, and something else. Something neither of them named. After a while, Lyra spoke again. "Do humans often put themselves in danger like this? Standing near powerful creatures without fear?" Evan tightened a screw and looked up briefly. "Sometimes we do. Sometimes we have no choice. And sometimes it is because we want to see what is possible. Fear limits us. Courage allows us to act." The Queen tilted her head, studying him. "You speak as though humans are fearless, but that is impossible. You must be afraid of something." "I am," Evan said calmly. "I am afraid of failing. I am afraid of not helping when it matters. Fear itself is not the problem. It is letting fear control you that is dangerous." Lyra considered this, then nodded slightly. "Interesting. Perhaps that is why you are still alive. Most would have fled, most would have hesitated. But you act. And that is why I allowed you near my armor." Evan worked in silence, listening to her breathing and the faint hum of the machinery. It was a strange kind of intimacy, this shared focus on the armor. He did not fully understand the Queen, but he respected her, and he could see that she respected him as well, in a quiet, careful way that few others ever did. After several hours, the repairs were complete. Evan stood back and tested the armor with the built-in systems. Every joint moved smoothly. The stabilizers responded perfectly. The scratches and fractures had been repaired, and the armor was ready for battle again. "You have done well," Lyra said, her voice calm but approving. "Better than I expected. Few could repair it without damage. Fewer still could do so without hesitation. You are remarkable." Evan nodded. "Thank you. It is my job to do what is necessary. Nothing more, nothing less." Lyra's eyes softened further, and she leaned slightly closer. "Remarkable. Yes, humans are strange. You are strange. I like that." Evan blinked slightly, unsure if he had heard correctly. "You like that?" he asked. "Yes," Lyra said quietly. "You do not fear me. You do not tremble. You do not lie. You are steady. That is rare. That is valuable." The Queen leaned even closer, studying his face. Her eyes were curious, almost playful. "Do not misunderstand. This does not mean I trust many humans. You are an exception, but an important one. Perhaps Too important. Evan met her gaze calmly. I do not seek importance. I only seek to do my job well. If that makes me important, it is a byproduct, not the goal. For a long moment, they remained like that, studying one another. It was not hostility, nor was it friendship. It was the quiet recognition of skill, courage, and trust. Neither moved away. Neither broke the silence. The room felt smaller somehow, more intimate, as though the distance between human and queen had shrunk, replaced by a fragile understanding. Finally, Lyra leaned back slightly, relaxing her posture. You may leave for now. But tomorrow, you will return. There is more work to do. And perhaps, I wish to speak more. About humans, about courage, about your ways. I am curious. I am curious. Evan packed his tools and nodded. I will return. I do not leave tasks unfinished. As he left the chamber, the guards looked at him with a mixture of surprise and respect. He had survived, unshaken, in the presence of the most feared queen in the galaxy. Not through force, not through weapons, but through calmness, skill, and courage. Later that night, Evan thought about the queen's words. Humans often underestimated alien warriors, assuming they were monsters without thought. But Lyra was far more than that. She was cautious, intelligent, and unafraid to show curiosity when she saw someone worthy. And Evan realized, quietly, that she had seen him in a way few beings had ever seen him. Not as a small human, not as a subordinate, but as someone capable, reliable, and unafraid. And for Lyra, sleep came fitfully. She could not stop thinking about the human who had touched her armor, who had repaired it, and who had stood near her without fear. She wondered what it meant that she had allowed him so close, that she had felt comfortable. Almost. That thought was both thrilling and unsettling. Queens were not supposed to feel comfortable near anyone. They were supposed to command, to inspire fear, and to maintain distance. Yet Evan Parker had crossed that line without intending to, simply by being himself. Tomorrow, she would see him again, and she could not wait. The next day, Evan arrived at Queen Lyra's chamber earlier than usual. He wanted to be ready before she summoned him. The guards were at their posts as always, watching him carefully, but Lyra did not call them over. She sat on the raised platform, her armor partially disassembled, the pieces laid out in neat rows before her. Her green eyes flicked toward him as he entered, and for the first time, she nodded in acknowledgement rather than issuing an order. You are early, she said, her voice calm but carrying a faint note of amusement. Do you always arrive before you are called? I prefer to be prepared, Evan said, setting down his tools. It is easier to work that way. Less chance for mistakes. Lyra tilted her head slightly. Humans value preparation more than bravery sometimes. Or is it courage that guides you? Evan shrugged lightly. Both. Bravery without preparation can lead to failure. Preparation without courage is useless. Together, they matter. The queen studied him, her eyes narrowing slightly. Few humans understand such balance. Most act on impulse or fear. You are different. Perhaps that is why I allow you near me. Evan focused on the armor. Today, the repairs were more complicated. Some plates had small cracks that could expand during battle, and the stabilizers had shifted slightly under strain. As he worked, he noticed something unusual. Several faint scratches on the inside of the chest plate. Almost invisible, unless one looked very closely. You have fought recently, Evan said quietly, examining the scratches. Lyra's jaw tightened, and she looked away for a moment. Yes, she admitted. I went into battle myself. I cannot trust all my warriors to handle the enemy. Sometimes, I must fight. Sometimes I must test them. Sometimes I must protect my people personally. Evan nodded, his hands steady on the tools. You are not weak. You are strong in ways most cannot understand. That is why this armor needs care. It carries more than your body. It carries responsibility, your people, and your legacy. The Queen's gaze softened, though she did not fully relax. You speak plainly, and yet you understand more than I expected. How do you do that? Who? I observe, Evan said simply. I do not judge. I repair what needs repair, and I watch. Sometimes, that is enough to understand a little more. Lyra leaned forward slightly, her elbows resting on her knees, studying him. You touch my armor, as if it is yours. Yet, it is mine. Why are you not afraid? Because I respect it, Evan said. I respect what it does, what it represents, and the one who wears it. Fear would not help me repair it. Respect helps me do it right. The Queen's eyes lingered on his hands, steady and confident as they adjusted the inner stabilizers. She noticed how calm he was even when working near the most sensitive parts of her armor. Many humans would have faltered, dropped tools, or pulled away at the slightest pressure. Evan did none of these things. You repair more than metal, Lyra said softly, almost to herself. You repair confidence, trust. Others cannot do this. Evan did not look up. I repair what I can. Sometimes it is the machine. Sometimes it is the faith in the person who uses it. Everything is connected. Everything. 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 For a moment, Lyra's eyes softened. She had never allowed anyone this close. Guards, advisors, generals, none had touched her armor so directly. And here was a human, delicate compared to her massive size, yet strong and careful in ways few could be. You have done well, she said finally, her voice calm but approving. Better than I expected. Few could repair it without damage. Fewer still could do so without hesitation. You are remarkable. Evan finished tightening the last stabilizer and tested the movement of the armor. Every plate shifted smoothly. Every joint responded perfectly. It is ready, he said. You can move without worrying about failure. Lyra leaned slightly closer, her eyes studying him intently. You are not afraid, she said again. Not many can stand near me without fear. Why do you not tremble? I trust you to trust me, Evan replied. The Queen's lips curved faintly, almost a smile, though she did not allow herself to fully show it. Few beings earn that from me, few humans, even. You are an exception, perhaps too important. Evan met her gaze calmly. I do not seek importance. I only seek to do my job well. If that makes me important, it is a byproduct, not the goal. There was a long silence. Evan packed his tools slowly, not wanting to break the fragile connection they were building. Lyra remained seated, watching him, her posture slightly relaxed now. She was used to commanding, ordering, and striking fear. But with Evan, none of that seemed necessary. She felt calm, though she did not yet understand why. Finally, she spoke again. You will return tomorrow, she said. There is still more work to do, and perhaps I wish to speak more about humans, about courage, about your ways. I am curious. I will return, Evan said. I do not leave tasks unfinished. Lyra nodded, though she remained seated. Good. Tomorrow. Then. And perhaps we will learn more about each other. Evan left the chamber, the guards looking at him with a mixture of surprise and respect. Not through strength or weapons, but through calmness, skill, and courage, he had survived the scrutiny of the most feared queen in the galaxy. And he had earned a piece of her trust. That night, Evan could not stop thinking about her. Humans often underestimated alien rulers, assuming they were cruel or dangerous without reason. Lyra was neither cruel nor reckless. She was cautious, intelligent, and unafraid to acknowledge those she respected. He realized that she had seen him not as a small human, not as a subordinate, but as someone capable, reliable, and unafraid. For Lyra, sleep did not come easily. She could not stop thinking about the human who had touched her armor and repaired it without fear. She wondered why she had allowed him so close, why she had felt comfortable. Queens were not supposed to feel comfortable near anyone. They were supposed to inspire fear and maintain distance. Yet Evan Parker had crossed that line effortlessly. The next morning, she prepared the armor for another round of inspection. Today, she decided, she would watch more closely. Not only the work, but the man himself. She wanted to understand him. This human who moved near her with quiet courage, who did not flinch, who did not lie, and who seemed unafraid of her power. When Evan arrived, he noticed her subtle difference. Lyra was more relaxed, less rigid, though her posture still carried authority. She gestured for him to begin, and he did so immediately, adjusting plates, checking stabilizers, and ensuring everything worked smoothly. "You move well," she said quietly as he worked. "Deliberate, careful, confident. Few could do what you do." "Experience," Evan said softly. "And focus. Fear does not help." She studied him for a long moment. "Humans speak of fear as if it is weakness. But you speak as though fear is a tool. You control it." "I try," Evan said. "Fear is natural. Using it wisely is what matters." Lyra leaned closer, her curiosity growing. "And courage? How do humans know courage? How do you decide to stand so close when others flee?" Evan paused, tightening a stabilizer. "Courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is acting despite it. Humans survive by acting when it matters. Sometimes, that means standing close to something greater than ourselves." The Queen's eyes softened, and for the first time, she allowed a faint smile. "Perhaps that is why you are still alive. Most humans would have fled or faltered. You act, and that is why I allow you near my armor." Evan worked in silence, listening to her breathing, the faint hum of the armor, and the quiet tension that filled the room. It was a strange intimacy. This shared work, this trust, built slowly, quietly, without words. As he finished checking the last plate, Lyra's hand brushed his shoulder lightly, almost accidentally. Evan froze, but did not move. The touch was not commanding, not threatening. It was a gesture of curiosity, a quiet acknowledgement of the bond forming between them. "You are steady," she said softly. "Few could do this." I like that." Evan smiled faintly. "I do not seek approval. I do what is necessary. If that earns it, it is welcome." For a long moment, they remained close, studying each other in silence. It was not friendship, not love, not command. It was understanding, respect, and the beginning of something neither of them fully named. Finally, Lyra leaned back, slightly relaxing her posture. "You may leave for now," she said. "Tomorrow, we continue. And perhaps, we speak more." Evan nodded, packing his tools. "I will return." As he left the chamber, he realized something important. Trust had been earned today. A bond had begun not of words, but of quiet courage, respect, and skill. And both of them knew that when they met again, things would change. Perhaps in ways neither could yet imagine.